Welcome everybody to the Physique Coach Podcast number 2. And today I have someone who has been a very, very, very special part of my life for a long time now. Jane Bateman. Jane, how are you?
Good. Hi, Mark.
Good. Well, Jane, I think over the last year, people have got a little bit more insight into me and my psychology and how I've kind of shaped where I am today and the journey that I've been through. But I want this podcast to be very much an opportunity for people to have a little insight into my mind and the work that we've done. I don't mind. I think for people to learn, it's very important to share, and therefore I'm very happy to tell people how we met, what work we've done together, and how it's helped me move forward. But I also think that the podcast is going to be a fantastic opportunity for you to, and myself, to be able to give trainers, coaches, and day-to-day people some really helpful little tips to help them achieve what we talk about as an excellent life. So our relationship goes back probably now
10 years.
10 years.
10 years.
Wow. And I remember I was not long a personal trainer, and right back then I was a trainer who was training people for the sake of training people because I liked being in a gym, and I was kind of trying to find my way in life but knew it was something to do with the gym. And I came across you, and we started working together, and I was training you, and it wasn't very long after that I realized that you were a very, very special person. But to me, you also had a special way of living and a special way of expressing yourself and your belief in life. And it did, I'm sure you'll tell me in a second, take me a long, long time to, in a way, come round to understanding. And I suppose I had to go on my own little journey of exploration. So do you want to just share with us a little bit of your thoughts on how we met and the type of person you met when you met me?
Well, it's going back 10 years now. And I came to you because at that time I was trying to recover my life from quite an impactful disease of total endocrine failure. And that completely shut my life down in so many ways. And so I started a journey to recover. And you became very instrumental in that. And so, as I say, it goes back now 10 years to late 2004 when we started. And there seemed to me to be at the time a very strong resonance between us. We were helping and giving to each other constantly, and a relationship developed which allowed us to explore so many other aspects other than just the physical movements in the gym. And we started really exploring very much at the mind level. And it was as much a journey of discovery for me as I suspect it was for you. And actually, it became quite an adventure.
Very much so.
And we both had such an impact on each other, but in a ways that we both needed at that time. I certainly needed to recover on many levels from my situation, my medical situation. And as you just said, you were looking to find your way in the world that included working in the gym, to be more than just working in the gym. And I think in a lot of ways, Mark, in 10 years, when I look back, you've been a huge inspiration in my life. And what I do now, which in some respects is not something I actually chose to do, it seems to have evolved. But you've been a huge impact in my life on that level too, because in a lot of ways, as we explored possibility, as opposed to limitation on mind level, body level. We've both been able to grow and expand and experience really quite an amazing life.
And it's been really interesting along the way when we've talked, every time we've come together and discussed how many opportunities have come our way, and we've discussed in the early days whether they were fate or whether or not, there was a reason for it happening. And I remember you used to say that a lot of these things were because I had created them. There's going to be a lot of people on this listening to this podcast who are going to have their minds very challenged when they listen to this, because I remember having a phone call with somebody recently, and this will resonate with you. Somebody on one of the social media networks challenged me and said, people can't have what they want. And, do you remember when we first met, I remember you saying to me, anyone can have anything they want. And we had a good 3 weeks where our relationship in the training environment was very tense, because you're very, very strong in your belief, and I didn't have that belief in me. And 10 years down the line, I'm now having the similar conversations with people who have their own limitations. So it's kind of come full circle. But I want to ask you, if I may, before we get kind of into some of the work that we did together, how you ended up. I know you told me kind of in 1987 you embarked on what was probably the first course that you did relating to the development of the mind and the possibilities of living an extraordinary life. But how did it evolve for you?
Well, as I sort of feel so much in my life, possibilities and opportunities come along, and I've been fortunate to have many of these, and I've responded to them, i.e. I've engaged with them. And they've taken me really on an extraordinary journey in so many ways, because they've taken me down avenues of possibility that I could never have imagined. And, going back to that conversation about you can have what you want, it's actually very, very simple. You can have what you want, or the reasons why you can't. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And, a lot of this is simple. It's not complicated. It really is using the brain as it's designed to be used, and being in a state of trust as opposed to the state of fear. Now, when I say the state of fear, it includes things like anxiety, anger, resentment, jealousy. All those are really states of fear. The other state, the state of trust, is trusting, not knowing what's going to happen. Mm. It's not knowing what the outcome is going to be. You just stay in trust, and then what happens is this amazing journey opens up, and possibilities of all sorts of shapes and sizes start to present. And if you've got the courage in order to respond to those, it's amazing where life takes you.
So pre 1987, when you went on the Landmark Forum, were you living at any part of your life a level of limitation, or did you? When was it in your life that you opened yourself up to these possibilities?
Well, I think for me personally, I've always had that mindset. However, our culture that we live in is very much one of shutting down those sorts of, people would accuse you of having a wild imagination,
yeah,
or being unrealistic,
yeah.
And those sorts of judgments of others can very much have an impact of shutting you down, or thinking, well, I need to find a new way of operating here that's not so open to people's judgments and ridicules. The beauty of sort of since then is that I've recognised that you have to stand by your convictions. You have to live it, and at the same time, respect other people's opinions on what you're doing, but not actually act on them by standing true to who you feel you are. And that way, you end up giving permission to others for them to be courageous in whatever area in their life they need to be courageous, to stand up for their position in the world.
So was there sorry, Jane, was there a part of you, if you had, that had this inbuilt ability to help people, experience what you believe you were experiencing in life? Was there a point in which you thought, I want to become certified to be able to help people and, join an organisation such as NLP, or was there a kind of point where you thought, this is what I want to do in terms of helping other people?
Well, I've always done that. I've always been available to help others. I mean, all my career has always been people-orientated. But what, in a way, I suppose this has given me, although I didn't set out for that, is given me some credibility of having the training behind me now, because I've trained through Richard Bandler, the highest levels of NLP. I've continued on to that because, for me, there's more than just the mind and the body. There was another level, and I've explored that, which has taken me into neuroscience and energy medicine.
Which we're going to get into shortly, which I'm really, really excited to tell everybody about. But I'm going to share with everybody for a few minutes where I kind of began to ask Jane for her guidance and coaching. I, very early on in my personal training career, knew that I didn't want to just be that same old personal trainer. I had inside me a knowledge or a feeling that I was destined for more than where I was at that particular time. Now, for me, as you open my eyes, that was then available to be explored. Exploring the possibility in my life that I could be whatever I wanted to be. And that became our first little barrier.
Yeah.
Because at that particular time, and my father will remember me saying, no, I just want a personal training studio, just me, in my own little world, and I don't want anybody else involved. And my father, whenever we talk about business, says, well, now you've got a 5,000 square foot gym and 8 trainers and a big profile and all this sort of stuff. And he said, do you remember when you didn't want that? And it's very important for me to be reminded of that, because if I'd still stayed very limited in my beliefs back then and hadn't explored the opportunity of getting rid of those limitations, I wouldn't be where I am now. And there's a long, long way for me to go. And, only recently you and I were exploring more and more opportunities for me to be able to move forward. But one of the things that we looked at initially was, I remember saying to you that I wanted to write articles. And I wanted to write articles for my website. And I wanted to start getting a little bit more credibility than any other trainers by sharing my work on the social networks. But I told you that I'd got to a point where I kind of got a lot of anxiety when I was trying to write. And again, a lot of trainers will say, I've got to put content out and information out and share information with other people. But they themselves have this limitation that they're not good enough, that they don't know enough. And that's where they stop. They don't explore the possibility of it being gone.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in your, you came to my house actually, and we did our first kind of coaching session, and I found it very uncomfortable because I wasn't relaxed with the thought process of kind of losing a bit of control. And I, within about 3 months of starting working with you, I'd been published in GQ, Men's Health, written about 30, 40 articles, continually with building my social media profile. And I remember us sitting back and saying, this was the guy that had this limitation. So can you just share with us, not necessarily your tricks and techniques that you use, but what was it that allowed me to be rid of that limitation, that allowed me to move forward, that people could potentially explore?
Well, from your perspective, you did everything I didn't. You are the one who changed that limitation into a possibility. I was just there to assist. And as I said earlier, it's an act of courage. You were clear what you wanted, and you were courageous enough to explore where that limitation existed. And in doing so, it became into your awareness. So it came out of that powerful unconscious mind into your conscious mind. And you were able then, with awareness, to allow it to release. And it released you. But it was you that did it. It was you choosing to, with courage, to address this. And now, I'm sure that any limitations that you sense, you know how bringing it to awareness and letting it go frees you. Because ultimately, this is all about freedom. That's always been my goal in life, freedom. And this is about allowing you to take your own freedom and live it. And I remember saying to you at that time, the world needs you, Mark. And I think at the time, you never really quite grasped exactly what I meant. But now, you see, you are giving to the world. You are inspiring the world. And it's you that has created that in your own. We each of us create our own worlds. And there are no limitations. Our natural state is a state of power, of joy, of happiness, of success. We are powerful beings. But as we journey through our lives, we take on other people's judgments and opinions, the culture we're living in, any traumas or upsets, disappointments that have come our way. And all these start to build a wall, it's a good metaphor to use, around possibility. And this wall can start to come in closer and closer. And so our lives are lived in a very small space. But that wall is just an illusion. It's just something that we have created, really in a way to protect ourselves so that we don't have to encounter the same traumas, the same upsets, the same disappointments. But actually, again, suffering from those is just an illusion. When we realize that actually they're challenges, and challenges are very good for us because they move us forward. Without them, life would be pretty boring. We wouldn't evolve, and as a species, on a macro level, as a species, we're in a state of evolution. And each of us has to play our part in that. And we take our own unique way and our own unique world, and we give it out to the world. We share it. We become an inspiration to others. And you live it, and this is the key. It's all right going on courses, reading books, seminars, going for coaching. But if you don't live it every minute of the day, you lose it. You get stuck back in that old brain, the brain that evolved during our Neanderthal ancestors, which is governed by the 4 F's, which is fear, feeding, fighting, and fornication. And we just go round and round in that brain, reacting to situations that affect us on those 4 F's, instead of recognizing there's a far more powerful aspect to us, that just by changing our perspective and accessing the higher brain, we live in a world of awe and wonder and possibility. And the limitations in that lower brain state, we know that they're there, but we don't respond to them. We don't react to them. They're assigned to our memory. They are not informing our actions every minute of the day.
And do you see this limited state that people are living in right now is one of the, from my perspective, it's one of the key reasons that, like you said a few minutes ago, people don't move forward. And I find so often when I talk to people about where my depth as a person is and my own beliefs are, they look at me with such inspiration and excitement and an almost power and strength for them to move forward from where they are right now. And then 2 weeks later, they're back where they were.
Yeah, because the reason being that is those old programs of limitation that run in that lower brain are power, because they're in the unconscious part of the mind, which is far more powerful than the conscious mind.
Could you just explain the difference between the subconscious and conscious for those that are listening who can't really relate to what these two very, very important bits are?
Well, in our conscious mind is our everyday mind. And that can deal with about 7 pieces of information per second. The unconscious mind, which is running us 94 to 97% of every part of the day, can deal with 40 million pieces of information per second. So you can see which one's far more powerful than the other. So, for example, New Year's resolutions are a great example. January the 1st, people say, right, I'm going to get fit, I'm going to go to the gym. Gym memberships go up beginning of January, fueled by these New Year resolutions. And people start going to the gym, and then as we get towards the end of January, attendance numbers start to fall down. Why? Because there's some program running in that unconscious mind that is not aligned with that conscious decision to get fit. And whilst that's still running in there, it will always sabotage. So, you don't need to go to somebody necessarily to fix it, because in everybody's case, it's not necessarily going to be something they want to do or is viable. But just bringing awareness to how we are functioning. So when these limiting thoughts, which is all they are, because from our beliefs, which are underpinning everything, we create around 60,000 thoughts a day. Now, research has proven that 80% of those 60,000 a day are mainly negative. So you can see the impact the unconscious mind has. If out of your 60,000 thoughts, 80% are negative, and they're usually driven by the not enoughs. I'm not good enough, I'm not educated enough, I'm not successful enough, I'm not rich enough, I'm not attractive enough. All the not enoughs are running in this unconscious. And so what happens is, this starts to, that little voice in the head starts telling us all these not enoughs. And we just sort of dissolve. The intention starts to weaken. But the thing is, when we start to bring awareness to this and challenge it, we can just let them go. We realise we don't wish to be that way anymore, so we change our perspective about ourselves. And in doing so, we change the thoughts. Because our thoughts are creating our reality. For the 70 billion people on this earth, there are 70 billion worlds. We are each creating every moment of our existence. We are responsible for everything that happens to us in our lives. And people may challenge that. And they say, well, how can my mother be responsible for heart disease or some other big diagnosis. But when we look back and find the root, there is a root there that's in this limitation, that's being informed daily by our previous responses to traumas, to upsets, to other people's judgments, to our culture's expectations, and we're living it. But when we start to sort of shine a light of awareness on it and think, have I allowed these things to stop me having what I want, being what I want, doing what I want? Then we can just sort of dissolve them because we let them go.
So what's interesting is that a lot of people, and you've just touched on this, there never is much time in many people's days for reflection. There's not often people sit back and just think about what's happening and make a choice as to how they are going to deal with the situation. And one thing that I'm able to do so often is make a choice how I'm going to feel about anything. Yeah. It was funny, but I dropped my phone this evening and I'm going to have to get a new one tomorrow. But immediately I could get angry, be stressed all evening, or just accept it and realize that it's not important and it can be fixed tomorrow. And that immediately, the choice that I made had a huge impact on my stress levels.
Absolutely.
Because I made a choice then to not be stressed about it. And, like you said minutes ago as well, that's not necessarily something I have to go and have a course about. That's not necessary. It's just in every situation I come across, I can make a choice, and if I don't want to spend time with anybody and they're not going to be good for my energy, my choice is to not spend time with them. And as you and I have spoken about many times, how somebody else reacts to my decision to not spend time with them is not mine. It's theirs.
Exactly.
And what really interests me is the amount of people that carry so much of other people's feelings inside them, and they worry what somebody else is going to think about them. We've got people that start a weight loss program and they're more worried about what other people will think, and that root, that fear that's running through them of failing to let other people down because everybody else is being judgmental, again, is another reason why they fail. Yeah. And when we've got our clients at the gym who say, funnily enough, they arrive through, whether it's my teaching or social media or anything that I talk about, they arrive ready to change, not influenced by other people, not prepared to accept being put down by other people. So in a way, we've allowed people through our own teaching, through writing or YouTubes or even podcasts like we're talking about now, to make that immediate change and not be influenced by other people, which in itself is immediately clearing out any subconscious feelings that they have. So in a way, the people that are coming to see us, would you might agree, are already kind of doing a level of NLP themselves.
Yeah. You see, this is our natural state. This is how we are. We are powerful. And when we allow ourselves to react to other people's opinions, other people's judgments, other people's expectations that are not serving us, we recognize that other people's opinions of us are actually about themselves, projected onto us.
Yeah.
So I live from a position of whatever anybody thinks about me is none of my business. And that's hugely freeing because I recognize, and that actually comes from when people are being supportive or nice to me or whatever, I can keep out of reacting to them. Because, if people are telling me, I was wonderful all the time, can you imagine how limiting that could then become for me if I was responding to those opinions? I could sit and say, well, I needn't do anything now because people think I'm wonderful, which is just as debilitating as people's opinions of me, which is not so flattering, of, that I talk rubbish, or I have no empathy with them, or whatever it may be. It's so freeing to stay in. Other people's opinions are none of my business.
That's incredible. Do you know, so many people listening to this podcast will find themselves challenging where we are right now. And they'll say, do you remember the phrase, hocus pocus?
Uh-huh.
Now, just explain hocus pocus to everybody. Because at this point in our conversation, 35 minutes in, there are going to be people, and I want them to just sit back for a minute. If they think this is hocus pocus, why are they thinking it's hocus pocus? And what's hocus pocus mean?
Well, if I remember rightly, they were your words, hocus pocus.
Yeah, very much so.
Well, not mine.
Not yours.
I had to interpret what I thought you meant by hocus pocus, which is, this is unbelievable, it's not possible, this is fantasy.
Yes.
Am I right?
Well, the thing is for me is, and I've spoke to a lot of people, and there are people still when I talk to, I live an extraordinary life right now. And that's not an extraordinary, we're not talking wealth, we're not talking objects, we're talking mind. That's all we're talking about on this call. It's not about things that I've got assets or anything like that. But I wake up with this extreme feeling of drive, ambition, happiness, fulfillment, and it's all driven by belief in the process. And when I first met you, all I saw was this, and it can be perceived, correct me if I'm wrong, it can be perceived as arrogance, it can be perceived as very dogmatic, stuck in your ways, it's my way or the other, or no way. But with you, it almost seemed a world that was just not real, Of course that you're going to have bad days. This is what I used to say to you. Of course you're going to have, things that are going to set you off keel. But I was coming up with hocus pocus mainly because I just thought that where your heightened state of well-being psychologically, mentally, was unachievable. But now I'm there, I kind of want to reassure people that you might be thinking hocus pocus too right now. But unless you explore the possibility of an excellent life and try and discover and remove your own limitations and move forward, then you'll be thinking hocus pocus for the next few years, while the other person on this listening to this podcast takes action.
Uh-huh.
And was it you that was telling me about the course where the lecturer held up $100 bill? Take action.
Was that me?
No. No. So I was listening to. I think I was listening to a webinar, or it might have been a book that I read, and the lecturer was talking very much about taking action in life and just getting off your arse and moving forward. And he held up a $100 bill and he said, "Who wants this?" to the audience, and everybody put their hand up. And then a minute later he said, "No, seriously, who wants this?" And one guy in the middle of the audience got out of his chair and walked to the end of the row, walked to the front of the stage, took it out of his hand and went and sat back down. And he said, exactly, out of everybody in the audience, there was one person who came and got the bill. And we have this problem in life. Everybody who comes to see us in the gym gets a "I'm grateful" from me. Because however intimidating the gym could be, coming to meet me or my trainers could be, that person's taken action, and we need to acknowledge that and embrace that and make it a very exciting journey of exploration for them, instead of a journey that sends them back to square one. Because, as you said, all these people that we see and you see, they need to be able to live it.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of people coming into the gym, and immediately they've kind of made that choice that they want to change. And people always ask me, why do we get so good results? And well, we get good results because the people we work with have made the choice that they're going to see this through to the end. And what happens along the journey is they change who they are throughout the 12, 16, 24 weeks of training with us. Because after week 5, after week 10, the more you live with a positive outlook and a reduced limitations, the more your life improves and the less you're likely to go back to who you were. So, you know, I think there's a lot of people that going back to this hocus pocus that will say, you know, it's not, you're not able to live it long term. What would your answer be to that?
Well, if you're living it every day, every minute of the day, then it becomes who you are, it becomes your habit. Because the system, you know, you have your beliefs inform your thoughts then become your words, whether they're internal dialogue or external. Your words then become your action then becomes your habit becomes your values, and your values become your destiny. So it's all there. So when you get to that point, if you're living it every minute of the day, then it becomes who you are. And the beauty of it is, because we're all of one, everything that exists on this planet is of energy, then what we do in our lives impacts everyone else out there. And so we're not necessarily doing it in order to change the world, but we cannot help but change the world.
Yeah.
Because we are giving all the time. And we may just inspire a stranger to take action in their lives to match up with the words expressing internally. It doesn't matter. If we inspire one person in our lives, we would come to the end of our lives and know that we had lived a good life. And when we say living it every day, we live it every day. We live it when, you know, things don't work out quite the way we wanted them to work out. We don't give up because, it's bad. No, we respond to it in the moment. And we come to seeing it as a change of perspective. This is my opportunity to respond to this situation, which I've encountered in my life before, in a new way. And in doing so, you dissolve the limitation there. Because you are living from a place of power. You've taken the power back, as opposed to having the situation have the power. So, for example, when you talked about earlier about writing, when we sort of see ourselves as having a problem with writing, where's the power? The power is with the problem with writing. We don't have the power. When we take the power back, the problem with writing is powerless then, dissolves, and we just write. But you see how we give our power away to so many situations, i.e., not being attractive enough, or not being rich enough, or not being successful, strong enough. These are all limitations that we have created. But when we change our perspective on that and we live just through it, it just dissolves because there's nothing there. We think it is, we think it's a big thing, and however we represent it. But it isn't, it's just an illusion. Mm. And reclaiming our power gives us then what we need in that place of courage to continue.
That's incredible. And this moves me on really, really nicely to something which I have a lot of admiration for you, with the fact that you don't like to work with anybody who doesn't apply nutrition alongside your programs.
Yeah.
Could you tell me and everyone who's listening why you feel and clearly know, why nutrition is such an important part of living this wonderful life that we want?
It's crucial. It's crucial because for life in the 21st century, especially in the Western world, we are consuming substandard food, even when we are buying the best that's possible. We live in a very toxic world, and toxics in the brain is just as toxic from a toxicity as it is from a toxic thought. So, at two levels there. But we have to heal the brain first in order for these new neural pathways in the brain that we want to install, the new neural pathways of living from possibility as opposed from limitation. The brain needs to be healthy, and it's very compromised. Our nutrition, our diet, the environment we live in, stress, these are very toxic to the brain. The brain there's been more research on the brain in the last 25 years than the previous 200, and it's coming out fast and furious. And I've been very privileged to have up-to-date information coming to me from Dr. David Perlmutter, who's one of the US's top neurologists. And he does a great deal of research as well as action with his patients, what he discovers. So getting the brain healthy is key, and growing new brain cells, which until recently was considered that you couldn't do that, but neurogenesis now has been proven. So we can continually grow new brain cells, providing we have the nutritional base in order to do that. So we need to take the toxins out of our nutrition, and the biggest two toxics are gluten and sugar. Replace those by healthy living food, so nothing processed, and add in daily good fats. Good fats being DHA, omega-3. Now, most DHA omega-3 tablets, fish oils, are a combination of EPA and DHA. We need to find one which has a higher ratio of DHA to EPA. Avocado each day, fresh avocado. A minimum of a tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil and an extra virgin coconut oil. And then adding, because the brain is 70% fat, it needs to be fed good fats. And also by several times a week to kick in the ketogenic system, so that we are feeding our own body fat, which is the best fat for our brains, by going into ketogenesis. Now, in addition to that, example, curcumin, turmeric each day is a very good detoxifier for the brain. And switching on the NRF2 pathway is the fastest way to heal the brain. And to do that, we need those oils. We need no gluten and no sugar in our diet. We need to eat the healthiest living, so lots of green vegetables. For every 4 portions of vegetables, 1 portion of fruit. But the fruit to be only consumed between 12 and 2 each day, as opposed to first thing in the morning or evening. To keep the number of fresh vegetables to the highest, 7 to 10 portions a day, and protein, breakfast, lunch and dinner. So carbohydrates are very limited in this diet. They're not totally eliminated, but they are minimal. And this way we can fast get the brain healed, so that when we start the work with, on the mind level, to installing new neural pathways of possibility as opposed to reactions to old programming that's running in that powerful unconscious mind, we can get a far better result.
It's very interesting. It's very interesting you say that, because one of the things that we do with a lot of our clients is we notice a lot of anxiety. I mentioned in a post today about people being quite scatty and jumpy. And whilst they know that's kind of how they are at this moment in time, I can see that it's not the real them.
Uh-huh.
And I've said to many of my trainers, when they start working with a client, their personality will change in the first 3 weeks. And they've always said to me, they understand me now, but they always say, do you know what, 3 weeks later, 2 weeks later, this person is more calm, they're more focused, their balance and stability is improved, they're sleeping better, whilst they're obviously dropping body fat. And I said to them, 80% of the people who come to see us are toxic, they don't eat essential fats, and they don't eat much protein, and they certainly don't drink enough water.
Yeah.
And before we know it, the goodness of natural whole foods, proteins, essential fats, vegetables and water, before we start reintroducing more carbohydrates 3 or 4 weeks down the line, has started to heal the brain.
Yeah.
And we have a more compliant client. And I was talking to somebody today about the work that I've done with functional medicine over the years, and how a lot of the thought process in the phases of dietary interventions that we bring in are because I want a happy brain, a happy client, a well-being client who sleeps well, who starts this kind of anti-aging process as well as getting lean. And you and I both are very interested in the anti-aging field, and you are doing a lot of research in that at the moment. And it just proves everything that you've just said, that, you know, as body composition coaches, we are not just trying to get the body lean, because unless you get the body and the brain healthy, the person doesn't change. And if the person doesn't change, it's not going to be a change that is sustainable.
No.
You know, sustainability is very much to do with your own thought process at the same time, right?
Absolutely, because, see, as I said earlier, you know, when we're in a stress state, we don't have access to the higher brain state, the prefrontal cortex, this brain here, which is the fourth most recent brain we have, the highest brain. Because what happens is we go into fight and flight, and it goes back to our earliest evolutionary days where our ancestors were either fleeing or fighting for dinner. And that's all they were concerned about, was their everyday survival, whether they were going to eat dinner or be eaten as dinner. Now we still have that brain. We need it because it's our survival brain. And then the next stage of evolution came on with the Neanderthals, and as I said, that's the brain that's run by the circuitry of the 4Fs: fighting, feeding, fornicating, and fear. Now when we're in those brains, we are in a stress state. And when we're in a stress state, as you know, all our energy goes to our arms and legs to flee. It cuts out growth and repair of the cells. It cuts down digestion. Cortisol and adrenaline are released. But primarily, we have no access to this higher brain, so we have no access to consider what's happening in our lives from this higher brain state of perspective. We are stuck in this lower brain, going round and round in a very limited possibility, run by fear. So to get that stress state balanced back into how it should be, into balance, is crucial in order to get the advantages of working with the higher brain, in order to progress from limitation to possibility. And the nutrition is key to that process.
That's incredible. And do you know what's so nice, and I think this is why you and I came together so well at the beginning, is because, you know, my interest in nutrition did play an instrumental part in the speed of which we got your endocrine system functioning. But obviously there were a lot of dysfunctional hormones, which, started to come back into the game. And, as such, you lost a lot of body fat, you increased your strength, and you've gone on to be someone who not only I'm inspired by, but someone who you've changed my life. And it's through these meeting of people that we should never take them for granted, because where I'm at now in my life and the people I'm meeting, I'm grateful that I'm meeting them, but I'm meeting them not by choice, but not by accident. Exactly. It's because we're supposed to meet. And what I love about this right now, and this will probably happen for you, is that the people I meet are actually aligned with my brain thought process. So what happens when two people like that come together and they complement each other, real things happen. And that's why once you're living this state that you and I have talked about over the last hour, you then come into contact with people that are living the same, and that's when the magic really happens.
Well, exactly, and the beauty why this happens is because, as I said, we're all just energy, and we all vibrate energy, and our vibrations go out into the world. So we're a bit like radio signals, and people tune into us. Now, when we're living from a state of limitation of how awful life is, or, I never get lucky, all those sort of things, guess who tune into us? People who were also living from limitation. But when we change our vibration and we're actually vibrating from this higher brain state, the most amazing people start to come into our lives. And this is where we're in a state of trust, because it's not that we have to go out and do anything. It just happens.
But it's also very intimidating to other people, right?
If they've not experienced it, you mean?
Well, if you've got somebody who's living in a heightened state of, a heightened state of happiness, fulfillment, joy, and they're spreading, they are releasing an energy, a powerful energy.
Yes.
And that can come across to a lot of people as intimidating, but it's only intimidating because their energy isn't aligned. And about 2 years ago, I had somebody in my gym, and I asked them to leave because their energy was terrible. They walked in on a Saturday morning, and their energy was awful, and it changed the whole dynamics of the gym. And somebody said to me, "Don't be so stupid. We can't feel it." I said, "I can. And I don't want the energy," until that person went outside and changed their state. And they came back in.
Yeah.
And this is why I say to people, whatever's gone on in your day, sit in the car for 10 minutes and choose the state you're going to come into the gym at. And that's why I love having my own gym, because everyone's in line with the way that we do things, and they bring good energy to the gym. And that good energy resonates to other people that are training with slightly less energy, and it boosts them up. And so we have a gym full of energy. And when you and I are together, we could probably spend the whole day just shaking with energy, because there's so much to talk about with things that are moving forward. And this limited state of energy that people have, again, becomes that huge limitation.
Well, it's a good feedback to them. It's a good feedback system for someone who wants to be aware of how they are in the world. It's their feedback. Yeah. And if it's not where they want to be or who they want to be, you recognise, like a radio signal, you would change a channel. Yeah. It's the same thing. You recognise, I need to change my channel. I need to live from the perspective I have about who I am. And so it's a good feedback, and they notice who comes into their life. Who do they bring in? Are they bringing in the people they want to bring into their life, who are resonating with joy, happiness, success? Or are they resonating with people who are full of victim stories about how awful it is and how unfair it is and how it's not my fault. You know, recognize who's coming in, because everything that happens outside here in our world can only be fixed in here. We don't fix anything out here, fix it in here.
And isn't it wonderful that when I see somebody take action and contact me and say where your energy, where your mind is, what do I have to do to move forward?
Yeah.
And one of the big reasons why I'm very, very choosy with who I train now is people's inability to follow my instructions and follow it all the way through to the end. Because, you know, there's a lot of people who contact me and they contact you and they like the idea of having this energy that we have, but they're not prepared to pull the pin, as I call it, and live it. You know, pull the pin is letting go of everything else. And as you told me, I remember you telling me, and I'm going to ask you to tell it, holding the rope leaning over the cliff.
Which stage again?
The rope on your back, leaning over the cliff. At the landmark where they're talking about, you were talking about how most people live leaning over the cliff with the rope. Yeah. And then there's other people where they're happy to just lean over without the rope and let themselves fall, and just let life take them where it leads.
Exactly. That's trust. That's living in trust as opposed to fear.
Yep.
Living in fear, you want the rope.
Yeah.
You check 100 times it's strong enough before you get to the edge of the cliff.
Yeah.
The other way is you trust, and as I said at the beginning, what happens in this state is you let go of the doing, because it just picks you up and takes you on where you need to be. So you get out of the doing. You are just in a state of being and wonder and awe, because the most incredible things that you couldn't imagine start to come into your life. People start to come in, possibilities come in. And every day you wake up with a feeling of excitement of what amazing things are going to happen to me today. And that includes challenges, which most people would say, oh, no, I don't want problems. Change the word to challenge and embrace it, and know that for every challenge that comes along, it's an opportunity to grow faster. And so you live in each day in wonder and awe, as opposed to fear and dread. And another boring day, 4 days to go till Friday sort of attitude. You're living. The days actually don't lose the significance, because every day you are just living this 24/7. And it's a joy to live this way. I mean, it makes me laugh, it makes me smile. I'm never other than surprised at what starts to come in. And I can't imagine living any other way. But that's our natural state. This is who we are.
And through all these limitations and even life events, Jane, and we talk about this subconscious, and I'm just going to briefly share a story with everybody that back when I was at school, teachers used to say to me when I was 16, "You're stupid. You don't know the question we're asking in class. You should know the answer." Now, to some people that might have not caused a problem, but at that age for me, it did dented me hugely. And I would always have a fear of being in a classroom. And now part of my development as a coach was traveling all around the world, going to courses. And I was in fear of being asked a question. I was in fear of being asked to sit an exam or being pulled to the front to explain a topic. And I remember you and I did quite a bit of work on that level of limitation with me.
Yeah.
And I kind of flipped it around now because I do lecturing myself. And
this is why I'm smiling, because I'm a bit ahead of you.
Yeah. And it's incredible because last year I lectured. I've done a couple of lectures. Obviously, I do videos and podcasts. But I'm always very respectful of when people come and have internships with me, that to not leave that impression on them of fear, because I know in myself how impressionable I can be on people's developing their own limitations. Now, I'd like to think as a coach, however I coach people, is in a way that's ensuring they come out of the process a better person. But my own limitations and the work that we did together have, by me not being fearful of delving into them and looking at what they were, have now enabled me to live free from that. And that is, I've only have to, get an email from somebody asking me to write an article, or I've got an email from somebody asking me to do a lecture, and I have a little chuckle to myself. And I immediately say yes, because, this was something earlier on in my life that created severe pain and dreadful fear. And now it's something that's no longer there. So, I don't have to come and see you every time I get put in that situation, because it's now a choice that I make because that limitation is no longer there.
Now what it's become, from your, deepest wound, you now have got the greatest power, source of power from it, which is to transmute our limitations in that way. It's a perfect example of the power of switching our limitations, transform them to our greatest sources of power.
So let me ask you, I'm conscious of the time, and I'm conscious that you're probably going to be having, I'd like to think we've got so many people that are saying, hurry up, finish the Skype so I can take action, so I can move forward and create this amazing life for myself and share what Mark and Jane have both got and continue to develop. But can I ask you, for everybody that's listening right now, what are the first key steps somebody should make when they press stop on this podcast at the end to start potentially either removing limitations or moving forward?
First thing is to do exactly what you do. Take time out for awareness. So you get to know what you're doing. Respond to your own feedback. Take time to assess how you're functioning, and then evaluate where you want to make a shift, and then choose it. So you're choosing to live from this different perspective. You address that your brain is going to be healthy to hold on to these new neural pathways by reducing stress, keeping in balance, and feeding your brain, especially the good fats. And then, in that state of awareness, you can recognize how they have served you. How have you benefited from having those limitations in your life to date? Because there is a way that they have served us. And then you can acknowledge them and release them. And a good way to just release them is to release the energy of them by just, in a quiet, balanced state, blow them out. Once you've recognized them, just release them through the breath with a blow it out. And then you have to put in the place of where that was, what it is you're going to replace it with, where you're going to live from, this different perspective. Because you're changing your thoughts in order to change the words, the actions, habits, values, destiny. Be inspired by other people. You are hugely inspiring. I imagine on anybody who's tuning into your podcast, they're doing so because you have inspired them. So take the inspiration that they're gaining from you and put it into their lives. Model it. That's a very good NLP technique is to model somebody that inspires us and live as they do and smile about it, because laughter, and I have to say this to a lot of very, very serious people who come to me, I have to give them homework of 100 giggles a day. Why? Because they need to change the brain chemistry. They need to activate the serotonin and the dopamine and the oxytocin and the good endorphins in the brain. And laughter and giggling is one of the best ways to get that. So hold it lightly. Laugh at the way you don't quite meet your expectations. Have a giggle about it. Don't go inside and start beating yourself up by telling yourself you're stupid or you're never going to get this. Giggle about it and move forward. So every day you're starting from a place of setting the stage for the day. Today is going to be an amazing day. It's going to be full of wonder and awe. The most incredible challenges are coming my way. I look forward to them. Whatever words you want to use, but some way to set the stage for the day. And then go forward and recognize not where you're reacting to things as opposed to responding. When we react to things, it's usually in that state of fear. And so take the feedback and notice, what do I need to do to shift to that higher brain state of response to this? And it may be, if we're reacting to somebody else's judgmental opinion of us, a good way to accept it is that their opinions are about them, not about me.
Wow.
Just simple, it's just simple stuff really. And recognise one of the best things to remember is you can have what you want, or the reasons why you can't.
And you started on that, Jane, and we finished on that, and that is such a key take home for people. And that just doesn't mean about a quality of life. That means everything that you want, you can have. And I think there are going to be many, many people who not only have been inspired by the podcast and listened to you, because I've been eyes wide open and in awe of everything you've said. And do you know, it's been an amazing opportunity for me, because there's been quite a few things we've talked about that that I will implement. That I don't necessarily forget to implement them. I just have not necessarily found the right time to implement certain things. But I know I'm going to, my quality of life yet again from being in your presence is going to increase. So thank you. And I'm sure I'm going to join everybody who's listening to the podcast, and thank you for sparing your evening this evening and coming on and sharing your wealth of knowledge and sharing our relationship with everybody. So thank you, Jane. And
you, Mark.
I would also like to be able to put people in touch with you. So how would people reach you? How would people get hold of you? If they were serious, and I mean this, serious about taking themselves, removing limitations. Jane is a very, very busy lady, and just like people coming to work with me, I want serious people who are prepared to follow through and live out my program just as Jane is. So how would the people get in touch with you, Jane?
Email.
Okay, and what's that?
It's Jane Bateman, JaneBateman .nlp@gmail.com.
Thank you. And just for all of you listening, myself, you'll probably be picking this up from either my Facebook or my Twitter pages. As always, if you're interested in following any of my training programs, there's ebooks available on the website at m10fitness/programs. And obviously this is the second in the podcast, and there's going to be many more to come. I've already spoken to 5 guests this week, all who have been inspirational in my journey to being a coach to date. But this is a lady in front of me right now who has played one of the biggest parts, apart from my family, of course, in shaping me into the person who I am today, and coach and businessman. So, Jane, thank you. and I look forward to all the feedback from everybody, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Thanks, Jane.
It's been a privilege as ever.
Thank you.
You're my inspiration as well. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.